Welcome back to another episode of the Spitfire Podcast. I am your host, Lauren Lemunyon, the Spitfire Coach. I am coming to you from Arlington, Virginia. I have moved across the river, and if you don't live in DC, you don't know how hard this is. It basically means that you have to plan ahead to see your friends who live in DC, or you have to make an effort to get there, and I am adjusting. But I am coming today. I think I'm going to have an unpopular topic today, but I want to bring it up because yesterday I got triggered like nobody's business, and that's usually when I want to talk to you. So if you don't agree with me, you can send me an email, you can post about it, but I'm going to tell you what the topic is and then you can have an opinion on it. The question I want to pose to you is your support group really supporting you? And I bring that up because as a woman, I see lots of groups all about women empowerment, supporting the hustle, supporting the grind, being badasses, all of these collaborations coming together. And I have been left feeling very dissatisfied. And I couldn't really put my finger on it up until recently. And it's really about one thing. Are we supporting each other in our gunk? Are we coming together expecting to bring the shit? And I say that because I am someone who feeds off of strong people, who feeds off of creative energy. And I'm also very susceptible to taking on people's emotional stuff. So when I'm a coach, I'm prepared for that. When I'm in coaching sessions, I have an expectation that people are coming to me with issues, with things they want to work on, and I am in a role that can facilitate the change. But when I'm a part of these groups, I've been in different demographics of women in their 20s, in their 40s and 50s, business owners, non-business owners. The same theme keeps coming up where everyone talks about the struggle. Everyone talks about what they're feeling really, triggered by, vulnerable with, which is great in certain situations. But I know for me that all it does is bring up all of those feelings in myself, but these groups aren't set up in a way that allows us to really move through them. And I think it's being clear what is the intent of the group. And I think what ends up happening is people use a lot of buzzwords about what people want to feel when they're leaving it, but I don't necessarily think that these groups are set up that actually do those things. So this is not bashing, but I want to plant some seeds here. Are we looking for places that kind of trigger these things to make people want to come back, to make them feel like they need to be here in order to get what they need? And I say that because this is exactly what self-help books do. They make us feel good for a week or two, and then sure enough, we're left feeling like we don't have support, we don't make it happen. And the reason for this is it's externally supported, meaning that we're looking for outside factors, things outside of ourselves, to say that we're okay or not, to tell us what to do. And the truth behind all of this is that we have the answers within ourselves. We know exactly what we're afraid of. We know exactly what we need, but we're afraid of that uncomfortable space to get curious about it. And we're afraid to ask for what we need. So last night I went to a group, and it was great because I took it as an opportunity to ask for what I needed. I'm doing more videos and I'm feeling like I need support around that. But there's also like this emotional piece of like, not every time you get together with a group of women, do you need to cry? Do you need to like outpour? Like, what if we could make our time together a celebration, a piece of collaboration, a way to support and build up? And I know that this is challenging if you're feeling like you don't have clarity, but I am a firm believer that when we are in motion, when we're moving, when we're starting to shift things around, we start to see things clearer. But when we go down to that gunky place and we start to make the excuses, or we start to talk in the story of why we can't do things, and we don't get curious about what's behind the can't, we get stuck. And then we start to trigger other people who want to fix it for us, but really aren't listening to the emotion. They're getting into the story. We're actually threading people through our story, which helps us like relive it. So I'm saying this because we all have the ability to change the narrative. If you look at men's networking groups, they probably don't have this. This is not a conversation on gender, but more about an observation of what I've seen. And I have made a shift in the events that I want to take part in. I want to be around people who are operating at a higher level of making things happen, who have expertise, who are moving things forward. And we can talk about what we're afraid of, but let's move through it. Let's get to the heart of it and move to solution instead of being stuck in the fear. Because fear will always come up, and it's a matter of what do we do with the fear? Can we use the fear as inspiration to give us clarity on the specific piece we need support in? And I think the problem is we come to these groups and we share, but then we go right back into our bubble. We go right back into our insular mental process, which gets back into the story. And I'm sure you've heard it on past episodes where stress only exists in our head. As soon as we start to talk it out, as soon as we put it on paper, it starts to decrease in power that it has over us. So we have to do the work on ourselves. We have to put it on paper and look at what are the pieces that I'm not feeling confident about? What are the pieces that I can let go, or maybe I need to let go, but I'm not okay doing it? And then looking at the piece that's hooking us in. This is a much higher level of thinking in moving through. And this is really about people who are running businesses or who want to start doing this or who want to make those big, bold moves. And I think it's being really honest with yourself about the threshold for the risk. If you're not ready to do it, that's okay. But don't beat yourself up over it. It's okay to be uncertain, but you have to be curious about it. Otherwise, you will be stuck in this loop, in this pattern. And I think the way that we are not supporting one another, that we're actually keeping people stuck in this pattern, but it's disguised as support, is part of the problem. So I want you to be very intentional with the groups that you're going and seeking out. There's tons of Facebook groups and tons of meetups, but I want you to start hand selecting people that you respect, that you're inspired by, and invite them with a very specific ask. If you want to have coffee with them, be specific about that. I just posted a blog on my Medium page, and I'm going to put it on my website, about brain picking. So be specific on the ask, be specific on what you need, and start to reciprocate that. When we start to ask people for what we need, they start to then see us as a skill set too that they can leverage. And that's where collaboration happens. That's where magic happens. It's not just about having someone to commiserate with and vent, and sure, that's important to blow off steam, but if we're always looking to people to make us feel better, we're not learning how to do it on our own. We're not supporting ourselves. And we are going to have peaks and valleys in the things we do in our business especially. I had a really high where I broke 6 figures earlier this week, and yesterday was like I hit my butt on the ground because it was like, what next? But it's up to me to decide what I do with that. No one else is going to tell me the path that I need to take because it has to come from me. And it has to come from you. There's nothing that I'm saying right now that you don't already know. So you got to be curious and give yourself the space to just listen without judgment, without qualification, without evaluation on what it is. Just let those thoughts come up and put them on paper. And if they're not the emotion that you want, if they're not the sentiment that works for you, then get curious. So there is a journal prompt, and I'm going to create a worksheet on this where I want you to look at what are you feeling right now. What are the things that contributed to you feeling this way? If you didn't feel this way, what would you be able to accomplish? And what is this emotion trying to tell you right now? What is it trying to get you to pay attention to? It's amazing, that process. I did this on the metro because I was feeling very not sure of myself, and I'd been doing a lot of video recording, and that is usually a big sore spot for me because I try to muscle my way through it, and it just is never right. And it's not me. I don't come off authentic. And so I was sitting on the metro just not feeling 100%. And I did this exercise of what was I feeling. And I was like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling incompetent. I'm feeling unprofessional. And then I asked myself, well, what do I need? What is this emotion trying to tell me to pay attention to? And I keep going back to it, and it's ask for help. Ask for people who are experts in this to come back. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to the Holly Harper episode, a couple episodes back, we talked about geeking out on your garbage. So there are people who are really good at this that are going to save time and energy. And yes, it's going to be an investment. And this is something that I need to do because I am a DIY girl and I like to figure it out. But the reason that I'm a DIY girl is because underlyingly, there are scarcity issues that I'm always working through. But those are my issues. And there's nothing that someone is going to tell me that I should do that's going to make me have that epiphany to do something different. It has to come from me. And that probably sounds weird for me to be a coach, but to be a coach, a certified coach, because there are people who claim to be coaches that are not actually using coaching principles, the key to being a coach is to not give advice. Everyone has the answer within themselves, and it's up to the coach to look for the patterns, to ask the questions, to allow people to get to them themselves. So this episode today is to help you to ask those key questions. If you're not working with a coach, these are the things that you can start asking yourself, and be really conscious of those judgment emotions that are coming in, the judgment language. So if there's should, ought to, have to, need to, can't, get curious about that. If can't weren't a possibility, what might I be able to do? If I really wanted to do this, what would I need to make that happen? So just be curious with yourself. You don't have to have it figured out. And here's the thing, you don't have to do it. Just because you start something does not mean you have to finish them. So I want you to look for those absolute statements that are popping in that are stopping you dead in your tracks. Because the key to what you need is in those statements. What we resist the most is what we need to pay attention to. And it's probably what we need to do. So be gentle with yourself, be kind, and be curious to see what's under the surface. If you have any questions, if you have ideas, if you disagree with me, bring it on. I'd love to have the discussion. I might even bring you on the show. But if you have any suggestions, hit me up at lauren@spitfirecoach.com. Head on over to Spitfire Podcast. Make sure that you are subscribed for the show. There's a newsletter on spitfirecoach.com. And I've got a new ebook called Prioritization Hacks, 5 Keys to Maximize Your Day, that's available now on Amazon. It's available on the website. If you need any information or you want me to create an ebook for you, let me know. And check out the worksheet to help you work through the emotions that are keeping you stuck. You guys have an awesome day and keep being awesome. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you could, I would love it if you went on to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and left a review. Make sure you're subscribed, pass this along to a friend, and if you have an idea for a future show, hit us up at spitfirepodcast.com.